Hey, Janet. Oh man. So I want to say you and I met in 2018. Does that sound accurate to you?
Actually remember, but I know it was before the pandemic.
Yes.
Yeah. And so, yeah, we'll go with 2018.
And
It may have been
so
before that, but
bef- the only reason I say 2018 is because I'll share my version of how you and I met,
okay.
and then I want you to add to it or share your version. So I was in the time when I was about to start my business and starting to get connected with people in a different way, right?
Mm,
Especially here in the Dallas area, which you're here. And I reached out to Patty Clapp, who's a wonderful mentor,
mhm.
former boss, and asked her, "Hey, do you know any organizations where I could support them by, working with students, especially students that speak Spanish or, from different cultures?" And she told me about you. And I guess I'm not sure how the two of you knew each other. Is it
I
Leadership
was
Dallas or something?
on, nope, I was on the Friends of the Dallas Public Library board.
Ah, okay.
And
Yep.
so,
She was a
yeah,
member of
so
the
we were
board.
connected through that.
Got it. So she knew you from there. I'd never met you before, never heard of you, but she told me she didn't get into detail about the Eagle Scholars Program, but she just said, I think you should reach out to Janet Morrison Lane and connect there. And she gave me your contact information. Now, did I call you or email you? Do you remember?
That's the thing. I don't even remember. I remember the office. I remember you coming to the office.
I remember that too.
that's that's the main part. I mean, it would make sense that if it was 2018, it was 2018 because that was when you were getting started. I had already been at Vickery Meadows Youth Development Foundation for a little while. It just seems like, I mean, I got there in December of 2012. So it seems like a long time
Wow.
before I met you, and I feel like we've known each other forever.
True.
Um,
Yeah, I do feel
but
that.
yeah, so yeah, wait, what was your question? You said,
Yeah, so I'm trying to think of how we first made that contact. Like if I
yeah, the
emailed or I
call.
called you, or did we have a phone
Yeah,
conversation first?
I honestly don't even remember. I just remember inviting you over to the office just to
Hmm.
chat,
Hmm.
and I really didn't have any idea of what to expect. I think it was just for me, just another opportunity to meet somebody and to kind of figure out, where could they connect? And I don't know, maybe Patty had said something, but then that's the other surprising thing that it didn't even occur to me that Patty would have known me that well to like introduce us. And then
Interesting.
after you were in the office for like, I don't know, what was it, 2 hours? I don't know. But we were
It was a
laughing and
foreboding
talking.
of future conversations.
But we laughed, we talked, we joked, all of that stuff. And I know when you left, my boss at the time, she said, "Well, you guys just must have had fun in there, or something like that. Like you guys hit it off, or something." And I was like, "We did."
We did. Well, I will tell you, I don't even know if maybe Patty did an intro email between the two of us. It could
I
have
don't
been
know.
that. I don't know. That would have been kind of a Patty thing to do. Let me send you an email to
Okay.
both of you and you guys can take it from there. But I do remember scheduling a meeting. I didn't know why. I mean, I had an idea of the kind of things that I wanted to do, and I didn't know anything about your program. And so I
Right.
think I went in there saying something like, "Hey, looking for volunteer opportunities in this
Mm-hmm.
realm." And in that conversation, you told me about the Eagle Scholars Program and all the things that you all did in this college readiness program. And then you started talking about Toastmasters. Or somehow something came up about Toastmasters. I'm like,
Uh
oh
huh.
yeah, I'm in Toastmasters now.
Okay.
And you were like, oh
Okay.
my gosh, I've been wanting to do something with the young people. And I think you
Yeah.
used to do it and it stopped, or I don't remember what it was, but that was like a nice little spark. I think that's what sparked some of the conversation. And I'm curious about, since you didn't know why I was going, or at least not sure, what made you open enough or curious enough to engage in a
Hmm.
conversation with a stranger about this? Were you looking for volunteers? Was it one of those like I need somebody anyway? Like what was that?
I don't even think I was. I think, and this is, I don't know. I'm trying to think. Like if Patty would have said that, I think I always try to give people the opportunity and the benefit of the doubt, like, okay, somebody's introducing me, let me just meet with them and see what happens. And then I usually have, I know you're big on like vibes and you get,
Mhm.
feedback from people. And so I usually can feel the vibe of whether that's going to work or not. I mean, I feel like that's the kind of person I am, is like, I'm always trying to like scope out what's the connection here? I don't know, maybe it's a higher power thing, maybe it's a faith thing.
Mhm.
I'm not sure. I just know that I'm always like listening. I guess the other part of that is that bleeds over. It's always my work life, and it bleeds over into my personal life as well. Like, I'm always thinking like, how can this help our scholars? How can this help our scholars?
Mhm.
What can somebody do to help our scholars? And it actually, I guess it gives me more of an, I don't know, it's almost like an open door for friendship if it really connects. I mean,
Mm.
I don't know if I told you, but I've done this like on a date, even to where I was trying to figure, but I was like, my safe space was, let me see how he connects with, and that didn't work. It didn't work at all. So it was good you were there for that intention, because it just
Yeah.
kind of gave me that space to really just talk to you, see who you were, see what your talents and your skills and
Mhm.
all of that was, and you were willing. I think I remember thinking, okay, I don't know if she's just here to just explore her options or if she really is wanting to help. And I think when you said, like, this is, I'm starting this thing and I've always wanted to, and it was something about connecting with young people,
Mhm.
or I wanted to give back. Somehow the way you said it, I remember
Mhm.
thinking, ding, okay, let's go.
She's ready
And
to
then the
work.
right? And the Toastmasters thing we had started. I don't remember if it had started kind of phasing out. I want to say, so Miss Linda was the person who had been doing that
The
with the
Gavel
scholars, but
Club. Yeah.
yeah, and she was kind of, she was tired and she was older, and she was like, okay, I don't think I'm going to do this, much longer or whatever. And I thought, oh, but I like the opportunity. And
Yeah.
so when you started talking about just public speaking and that you were in Toastmasters, I was like, oh, okay, connection. This is a good connection. So, but
Yeah.
it was beyond that, because I mean, I could go to any Toastmasters, not that they would all do it, but I could go to
Yeah.
Toastmasters and say, hey, can you come help our scholars? Um, but I also remember, and I don't know if it was in that meeting or future meetings, where we just talked about like being more creative than just a
Mhm.
Toastmasters, like,
Mhm.
okay, let's follow this script and they've got to do X, Y, and Z, but
Mhm.
more just, and that's when I guess we called it Raise Your Voice. And then we just did it
Yes, raise your
differently.
voice. Well,
Hmm.
you may already know what led me to even reach out to Patty in the first place, but I actually was sitting in a luncheon that I was invited to attend, this Latinas who lunch, or Latinas who brunch luncheon thing.
Uh-huh.
And I wasn't the keynote speaker. They had a speaker, and I was sitting at a table with a few people that I did know, some young professionals, probably 20, 30 somethings in the group. I used, I'm not in young professional generation anymore, but I remember after the speaker had shared her story and her experiences, I overheard a couple of these young professionals talking amongst themselves about how valuable the information that she shared was, and how they wished when they were growing up they had someone like her. Like, if they could have heard this in high school or college, because their
Huh.
parents were immigrants to this country and they were not familiar with the corporate, structure or even the college life, that they would have benefited so much from having another Latina share this stuff.
Hmm.
And just me
I don't
overhearing
think I
that
knew that.
conversation, I was like, oh my gosh, well, I'm an immigrant, I'm also first generation in this country.
Huh.
And I've had to learn some of this stuff on my own. True. Man, I probably could help people like these young ladies. And that was the
Huh.
first thought I had, number one. And then number two was, because I was starting a business, I also knew that the way in which I wanted to get into business was also, I wanted to help first. I wanted it to be not just like, hey, let me hire me to do this. Like, I knew that I needed
Yeah.
to prime the pump by giving, but I wanted to be really
Huh.
intentional about where I gave. And so It's so when we met and all the things kind of aligned, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is exactly what I can offer, is exactly, and it was more expansive than working with Latinas or anything. And it wasn't even
Right,
just older, it wasn't professionals. These are young people, right? Between 7th and 12th
right.
grade. And I'm like, oh my gosh, prime time, college readiness. And these are students that are serious about preparation. And you all had so many wonderful things set up. In fact, I don't know if you even know this, but when I started volunteering with you guys, and I created this Raise Your Voice program, which is public speaking for
Hmm.
7th and 8th graders. You assigned another volunteer to work with me, and he was just kind of a support. Like I can't remember his name right now.
John, was it John?
Is it John? Oh gosh.
Tall African American guy.
No, he's not, he's white, dark hair. Oh my goodness, his name has escaped me.
Oh,
Um,
Michael.
I
Is
think
it Michael?
Michael. Yeah, kind of
Yeah, I think
youngish
that was
guy.
Michael. Uh-huh.
Um, so it was funny because he came to be like, so we were like co-teachers. But he
Hmm.
just told me, hey, just tell me what you need me to do. And I had the curriculum or whatever I wanted to do in the class. And we did a few, like maybe 3 classes. We met once a week, right? It was a whole semester with the students. So I think we met like three
Hmm.
times or something. And he's like, hey, do you ever do this stuff like for work, like professionally? And I was like, actually, I do. And I got my first paid gig in my business by volunteering at Eagle Scholars.
I don't know that I knew that.
You didn't know
Maybe
that? I
I
don't think you
did.
did.
I don't know.
I
Huh.
don't know.
Well, awesome.
Yeah,
Huh.
and I share this a lot because I think people miss it. There's something about
Yeah.
volunteering and there's no expectation. There's no like, oh, it's not a quid pro quo thing. I'm just there because I really felt compelled and I felt that there was, you all were doing something very special with these students and the environment was right. And I felt it was aligned with what I could offer. And,
Yeah.
this wonderful gentleman that was there to support and whatever saw and I was at my best, right? I'm doing something for
Yeah.
fun and
Right.
doing like my coolest stuff. And he's like, I think there's somebody I know that could benefit from this. So my
Hmm.
first paid gig came from there, and I was like, oh, that was just such a testament
Wow.
to making connections. So you see, like all these little
Yeah.
connection points. It always starts with connection. So,
Right.
but I want to shift now. So this was like the professional connection piece that we had. Um, and during Eagle Scholars, the program, you were like you're just going 90 to nothing. There's just so much
Right.
going on. There's so many things. At what point did we start to connect more like a friendship? Like, do you remember? I don't recall like if there
Huh.
was a distinct moment. Do you have anything in your mind about that?
No, because you're right. I mean, that was you always came on Thursday nights, and so it's
Hmm.
always just like, okay, you go there, you go there, you go there, you go there, scholars, scholars. Okay, get going, Pat. It's just rapid fire. And so, no, I feel like, um, I don't know if I think it was probably kind of at the beginning when you started coming, the number of volunteers I want to say up until that point, um, I kind of had this thought of, and kind of the reaction from people is, okay, I'll work with you once and that's it, or, a few times and that's it. And
The
so I
volunteers
know,
thinking this
for,
about you and
yeah,
your
or
team.
just
Okay.
about like programming, because, you hear that a
Okay.
lot. Like, they put it on billboards, like, you only have to do 1 hour every 6 months and you'll make a difference or whatever.
Uh,
And so I have that, I know that that's sometimes a thing with volunteers. But what I started noticing with our volunteers is we did minimize it so that we could keep, because before you, I don't think we had, I mean, we were just kind of growing our Thursday night program. We had gone from like 10 to 20, and it was becoming to like 30. I mean, right before the pandemic, we had 90 scholars coming every Thursday night. And also by the end, we had about 30 volunteers coming every Thursday night. And so at the beginning, when you came, I think that was kind of the beginning when we started doing, okay, we need this group of volunteers to do a 4-week class, or maybe
mhm.
it was a 1 semester class. I can't remember. But then I started realizing that all the volunteers just kept coming back over and over and over. And I
Mhm.
feel like we really kind of created this family almost,
Yeah.
of all of us. And so there were a lot of volunteers at that time that I really bonded with. Um, that did, I mean, because we saw each other every week, it might have been instructional and it might have been,
Mhm.
work for me and a volunteer opportunity for you guys. But there were times that I don't know how, and I don't know where that transition happened, but I just know that, and I think I told you one time because you said, I'm starting to get busier. And so I'm not sure, I don't know that I can come as frequently. And I said, that's okay because it's over time. It's not the ones who come once and then never show up again. I mean, scholars don't remember them, but if you show up, and I feel like that's just about, I guess this is the way I approach relationships is I may not see you for 6 months. My best friend at home, I talk about this all the time. Like I'll go 6 months, 8 months, we won't even say a word. And then it's just a text out of the blue, like, hey, I'm doing this curriculum. What source was that again? And she texts back and then we just move, and then we go back and forth, or she'll pick up a phone and call and say, okay, this is how you can, get this, blah, blah, blah. And then we just move on. It might be another 6, 8 months, or it might be 2 weeks later. So I feel like you were that type of person to me. It's like we had begun forming a relationship through this, weekly contact. A hi, how are you? Oh, good to see you. And we had such a connection in the beginning. So I knew that you were a, what's the word? Like I want to say like
an
a common
amazing,
friend.
angelic, iconic.
All of that. What is that word though? The spirit, like a bonded spirit,
Kindred?
like a kindred spirit. There we go. You were like a kindred spirit, and I knew that, and so I think I don't know how I don't know how we started doing our walk and talks, or or whatever. I don't even know if that was the first thing that I don't know if we just went and had coffee or what, but
well, let me,
because
I think I know.
okay,
Here's one of
go ahead.
the pieces, because you were like the core, you were the center of this Thursday evening program for all these young people. And because I was doing this leadership development public speaking class, I knew that there were opportunities for some of those the older students in that group to take on more public speaking opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think you and I started to talk about like, hey, who can we have make the announcements? Can you delegate that? I don't know if you remember this, but I kept asking like, can we give some of the scholars an opportunity to do some of the stuff that you're doing? Right. And
Interesting.
do you remember this?
I don't necessarily, well, very vaguely, but what is making me chuckle is it's also interesting how things like that get put into the fabric of the because now we've changed. I'm not the director of the program anymore because I'm the executive director now, so there's been other directors, and that piece has stayed. And so now if we went through a pandemic even, and I think we utilized that same model during the pandemic when we were virtual. And so we still had, I think we still had scholars making announcements, maybe. And then now that we're out of the pandemic and back in person, I mean, that's just a piece of it. It's like, and it's done a little bit differently now. Like it's all written up for them. Whereas I don't think I did that. I think I was just like, okay.
You started to. I think you started to write it like on the phone, and then you'd give them the phone.
That's right. Yeah, because we would pull them aside to say, okay, you got to get the names right. Practice the names. That's right. So, but yeah, so now it's a part of the fabric. So, okay, so you think that was the first? So then what happened after that?
I think because of it, you and I started having more conversations about like how we can leverage some of the experiences, and we started with the Gavel Club. I remember Ong and Abu, and there's some of these students that were kind of standouts. They were like, hey, how can we make this even more special for them and put them, give them a little more pedestal for them to show themselves. And so you started creating that. So I think because you and I were collaborating, we had more of those types of conversations. And then you came to the Gavel Club meetings as well and watched them. And so I think you and I had more one-on-ones about, hey, how do we make this more meaningful for the students? And then we just started talking about all kinds of stuff. So I think, this philosophy that I have about the circle of influencers, I talk about 4 different types of people that we have in our circle, where one of the people is like one of the types that we have is what we call a supporter or connector type, right? A connector type would be like how you and I started our relationship is, Patty said, hey, you need to meet this person because they can connect you to an opportunity, they can connect you to resources or information,
Mhm.
right? So I think you started off initially as a connector for me, but as we got to know each other and started to see each other more often and collaborate, I think we became another type, which is called a parallel type. And the parallel type are people who have a similar vision, like they're heading in a similar direction. And
Okay.
it's an opportunity for people to work with each other, either, kind of joining paths or joining forces to accomplish a particular vision. So I think we started moving into that. But because of our, just affinity for one another, the kindred spiritedness of the thing, I think you also became yet a fourth type, which is which is a supporter. Because also I
Oh,
think in the
uh-huh.
last few, especially in the last few years, we have met monthly since at
Uh-huh.
least after the pandemic. I don't think during the pandemic were we meeting on Zoom.
Mm, I don't know. Not consistently, I don't think.
Yeah,
We
I'd have to
might
go back
have
and
though,
look at my
because
calendar.
yeah. No, but I just thought when you said that circle of influence, that might have been the thing that shifted it because and you're always, you're great about offering opportunities. Sometimes they're my vibe, sometimes not.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And but I remember that there was I think it was a 6-week class, a 6-week Zoom on the your influence circle of
Oh my
influence.
gosh, yes. That was
And
in
I think that was
2019. Yep.
okay, I think that was the first time that we kind of
My coaching group.
that it kind of became outside of our program because I remember I had a small house and so I remember sitting on my bed like watching like with it on my lap doing this whole 6-week class and I remember in that
Mm.
I don't remember all the
Oh.
influencers when you just said those though. I'm like, oh yeah, 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 I do. I remember them. I just don't remember them specifically, but I do remember in that class thinking, can I ask Valerie to be one of those? And then I was like, okay, no, we're not. We're not that close or something. I remember thinking like now I'd be like for sure. Okay,
Mhm.
Valerie, you're this one. I need you in this slot. At the
Yeah.
time, though, I was like, well, I mean, she's this coach. So I don't know that I could ask her to do that, but I think she's good at this. But yeah, I
Mm.
think that was maybe the first.
That's interesting you say this because and I think part of this conversation for whoever's listening is the idea is to see how many different iterations of the evolution, not even iterations, but really the
Yeah,
evolution of a connection. Not all
right.
connections work this way, right? There are many people that I've met once, had a conversation, maybe it was a really lovely conversation, and then boop,
Hmm.
person has
Yep,
disappeared from my
yep.
from my perspective, and they're just, it was not a match, or it wasn't meant to be like a season, reason, a lifetime. There was a season or a reason, and that was it. But I think with you, because we had this evolution, right? We're working together on this program. I'm supporting the program, and all of a sudden we're collaborating about how to enhance the program. And then I'm maybe even challenging. I think that's a fourth type as a challenger.
Hmm.
I'm challenging, hey, how we can delegate some of your responsibilities. And then that became more of like a coaching kind of thing. So I invited you to the coaching group. And then after the coaching group, I think we just started to have more regular conversations. But I want to switch gears here because I think it's an important distinction that you and I have really gone above and beyond in many ways to nurture the connection, right?
Hmm.
Did I coach
Yeah,
Billy? Was I Billy's coach at one point too?
I don't think
Why did
so.
he
I know
start
you
calling
had
me
him.
coach?
I don't know, probably because I don't know. I guess because he saw you all the time, at Thursday nights. And I guess he knew you were a coach. Then again, my husband has names for everyone.
Okay, he has
I
a,
think,
that's
I
my
mean,
nickname. Okay.
maybe, yeah. I don't. When you say that, I'm like, oh yeah, because yeah, he does call people names, and I don't know how.
We
I
all have
now
a
that I'm
title.
think
That's fine.
I'm gonna have to think about that because he does that a lot with people.
Fair
He
enough.
always says like he always is like tell the coach I said hi, or tell coach I said hi, or something like that. He's always saying that. So yeah, I think it's just I think he does that for people that he has a fondness for, or a fond relationship with.
No,
So
he's been
yeah, I don't
awesome.
know
He's
when
been
that
on my
happened.
podcast and stuff. So he's been super supportive of our friendship too. But I think, I'd like to hear from your perspective, what has it taken? Let me ask it a different way. So what have you gotten from our connection with each other? How has that benefited you? I'd like to share some too, but I'm going to start with you because we have maintained this connection and continue to evolve it and deepen it over the years. But what is it that you're getting from this particular connection that's made that even feasible?
I think to go back, in that whole, like, as we expanded our relationship or whatever, I really think, I'm pretty certain, I would say I really know that it had to do with your intentional reach, outreach all the time. Because at first, I think, so I am very much I'm in my, I love what I do, I'm in my work. And I used to say when I first came to Dallas, and probably for the, I don't know, first 5 years or so, um, I felt like I was so absorbed in my work. Anytime I would make a friend, I would meet like one friend, and then I would tell them everything, and all of the stuff, whatever. And then I was like,
Overshare.
yeah, that's what I felt like. And they would, literally like move to Seattle, and I'm like, oh, it was that bad. Okay, I'm sure that I did not like make them move to Seattle, but seriously, like
Interesting.
one moved to Seattle, one moved to Tyler, one. It was always
Mm.
like I'd find this one friend, and then they would move.
Oh,
And so
wow.
I thought, oh, I am way too needy when it comes to friendships and relationships, and I can only find one at a time. Of course, that was early on, and so, but I love what I do, and it just, it's just a passion for me. And so not everybody gets with that. There's so many
Yeah.
people who want, separation between, job, all of this stuff. And I'm just not that. I'm not the person that, wants to go hang out at a bar after work. Nope, I'd rather just go
Mhm.
home.
Mhm.
So I think when somehow, like, you're very insistent in a very good way. So, like that workshop, the circle of influence, I think what you saw was, hey, this could be a benefit. And I think this is something that it's good to me. I think it's good when people are believe so much in what they do that
Mhm.
they want to share it with others. And I feel like
Mhm.
that was I don't feel like you were pushy, or still, like, I don't feel like, you've offered me a ton of things, like, here, try this journaling, or here, do this. And I'm like, and I've gotten to where I can't remember the last thing, something you were like, let's go out and do this. And I was like, hey. And you're like, okay. And so what I really value is the
Mm.
fact that I don't think you're going to get offended by that. I
Mhm.
think you are offering because you really believe in it. Some of the things,
Yeah.
there's more of the I don't know, some of the things that, we're not necessarily eye to eye on that. But I don't feel like you're going to be like,
I'm not
okay,
inviting her
that's
to
not the
anything.
person. Yeah,
Yeah. No.
and so I think your purposeful, intentional, continuous asks. I knew that we connected, but there were, and there were things that probably early on, I would say, and maybe even now, I don't know, that made me a little uncomfortable. Like, "Oh, I don't know about all that." And so, but I didn't feel. I think I'm probably more of the type to just kind of let it go at that point. Like,
Mhm.
oh, okay, yeah, we're cool and all this. We'll work together,
Yeah.
and that's all we need to do. But then we started doing I think it was the walks. No, maybe it was coffee for, I don't know. We started
Mhm.
meeting.
Mhm.
It's like, chit chat, chit chat, chit chat. Okay, they were chit chat, and that was okay. But I remember, I want to say we walked around White Rock one time, and both of us were like, it was really good. We've come so far in our relationship. And it was kind of like, I don't know if it was a light bulb moment, but it was just something, I feel like our relationship was just kind of a chit chatty, let's nice meet up kind of thing until it wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
And then from then on, I think, and it's, I think there are times that we really have conversations that both of us walk away from are like, that was so good. I got so much out of that.
Yeah.
Times that we're still just chit chatting. But, there's so
Yeah.
many, now we've gained so many memories, so we can laugh about going to a restaurant and you making me do like arm balances or whatever in the middle of public. Um,
Oh
so
yes, my psych
yeah, it
K.
just so I think now it's just a really genuine friendship where we can laugh
Mhm.
about some things, we can, we talk, and I
Yeah.
think also the evolution is just our personal lives because
Hmm.
we've gone through relationships,
Yeah.
like so you said let's see, when was it? You think it was 2018?
I think 2018. I think I just started dating Ahmad at the time. So we were probably talking about some of that. Although I don't know if we were even at that point yet.
Oh
I think
no,
it
we
took
didn't
us
talk
like
about any of that.
years.
Yeah,
It
we
took
didn't talk
maybe
about
another
that. But I
year.
was I was fairly newly married. So I had been married probably a couple of years. I got married in 2015. So yeah,
Okay.
2 or 3 years by then. But then even just like evolving through your relationships, my relationship, and then even just getting older, like age and all of this stuff,
Hmm.
and having a friend that was my age to just to talk with real life stuff about all of
Yeah.
that stuff, that just that evolution and that time together
Hmm.
really, I think that's where that has deepened our relationship as well.
100%. I think the thing for me is that you just have such a deep willingness, right? A deep willingness to
Mm-hmm.
share, a deep willingness to be open to receiving, deep willingness to explore. And some of the conversations we've had, I mean, we've talked about everything from systemic racism to menopause to ideas for how to encourage and grow these young people into like world-class leaders. And so I think the breadth of conversations that we've
Mm-hmm.
had has been so profound. But I just admire so much your willingness to go there and to share things. And I think that really accelerates relationship, right? When people are in, there's an opportunity for a willingness, and willingness doesn't also, like you were saying, doesn't necessarily mean that you always say yes to everything.
Right.
But I'm a person that's always learning. I'm taking improv classes. I do all sorts of, meditation classes. And, I mean, it runs the gamut. And I'm just like, you want to go? You want to try this? You want to do that? And I share
Have
with a lot
done
of other
a
people.
what's your class on Sundays?
Oh,
Impromptu
improv.
or
Yeah, I'm doing an improv.
improv?
Yeah.
Never in my life would I have signed up
But you
for
did come
improv,
to an
but I
intro.
did. I did.
Yeah, but I think, and even some of the stuff that I've offered for the scholars or for your team, and say, hey, you
Mhm.
have also created a space for me to kind of use as a
Yeah,
laboratory of sorts for my leadership
yeah.
workshops. And, by continuing to, maybe I don't do the Thursday nights anymore with the scholars, but I'm able to sometimes support your team and their development by coaching them or doing a workshop. So I think your willingness has been so instrumental in how far we've been able to grow this relationship. And then also this parallel path that we're on. The menopause journey is real. We have shared
So
so
real.
many things. I think you really allowed me the place and space to just say, here's what's been really annoying me, and here's something that I'm really struggling with, and the opportunity to just kind of bear myself a bit more than I'm probably used to,
Mhm.
especially in a professional, initially was a professional context in which
Mhm.
I think we've
Yeah.
evolved to that. But there's such a benefit, and I think that's the one thing I like for people to know from this particular type of relationship. Not all of them have it, right? There's got to be, like you said, there's got to be a kindred, a resonance that we have to be aware of, because not everybody necessarily wants to go there, and and both people have to be in it, but also that there's an opportunity to get so much more than whatever that level, surface level, or that initial entry point was.
Yeah.
And you and I have made a commitment. I think this is the other thing. it's not just like whenever we feel like it, or if we're in the mood, or if you remember, or I remember, that we have, for 4 years now, ish, maybe, I don't know, it's long.
Something like that. Probably after once the pandemic started opening up. So maybe,
Yeah. So maybe
yeah.
like 3, 4 years, I mean, 3 years
Hmm.
now or so. Like every month we have said,
Hmm.
okay, when are we getting together again? And either we're doing it on a walk, or we're going to a cafe, or we go to a festival, or we do something, right?
I've also been through where my feet hurt and I can't walk anymore. So we had to switch to coffee and, you know, all of this
I'm
stuff.
fasting and I can't.
Yeah, yep. I can't walk right now. Yeah, all of this stuff.
Yeah.
And but the other thing too, I think, is like, you're saying, like, for you, I'm more open and that allows you. I think for me, it is the persistence. And because I do have a tendency to just kind of drill down and stay in my work. And if you hadn't kept asking, and so I do
Mm.
remember, like, even the calendar, like, I'd be like, yeah, we'll meet up. And then you're like, okay, when? Like,
Like
hey,
right
well,
now.
let me get my phone. And you're like, let's put it on the
Waiting.
calendar. I'm like, I really have to do this. I mean, it just, and so I think in a relationship too, you
Mhm.
can, you can find the exact right person, I guess, that does all things the way you do them. But I think the compliment, and
Mm.
I'm not always a believer in, like, my husband and I, we talk all the time. If we were on the different political spectrums, we would not be married. I do not understand how people can do that at all. Just doesn't make any sense to me. But I think in some things, it's what is iron sharpens iron kind of thing.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so I think your insistence and or persistence, I would say, your persistence along with maybe my openness,
Mhm,
complemented each other enough
mhm.
to, and I think we both knew that, that we had a connection. There was something there, there was a vibe there that we both enjoyed. But like you said, that doesn't always continue. And even as you were saying that a minute ago, I was thinking I had been going through, I think it was last week at work, or maybe, I don't know, somehow I came across some names and I was like, oh yeah, I really liked that person. I need to get back in contact. But they had done some stuff with our program and now they're not. And
Mm.
and I want to continue that, but it's hard to keep track of everything in my mind. And as
Yeah,
I've got a million and one things, like, I don't know. I just try to grab them all and do everything at once.
yeah.
And so there's certain ones that do stick, and maybe that has to do with the ones who are persistent, like yourself. Like,
Mm.
I mean, because sometimes I think I might reach back out, but I think there's also that concern sometimes in a relationship, like, and I've seen this, read different books or whatever, where people are like, oh, but do they like me? Or, oh, you always
Mm.
have these doubts or these, whatever, especially as an adult trying to make new
Mm.
friends, whether you've moved into a new city. Like I said earlier, I always get one friend and then move on. You know, as an adult,
Yeah.
that's different because you kind of think, oh, well, everybody has their established friendships already. And I'm not in. So
Mm.
how do I get into that circle, or whatever? So there's that, it's just, I don't know, as an adult, you're not in a space like school or wherever that you would,
Yeah.
automatically cultivate those. A lot of times at work, you're like, okay, people don't want to see me outside of work. They just, they're here because of this. So there's just all kinds of variabilities there.
Mhm.
And so I think that combination for us, maybe for me now, it's not that I want everybody, knocking down my door going, hey, let's
I'm
meet,
coming
let's
back,
meet, let's meet, let's meet. Yeah.
Janet.
Because then I have to think,
Yeah,
oh,
be selective.
time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there are people that I do think fondly of that I just, I'm like, oh, I'll just sit at home. I mean, I'm that type of person. I call myself an introverted extrovert. Like,
Yeah.
I like talking to people, but then I like sitting, at home, and I can do either one. And I guess it just
You're
depends. But you were
comfortable.
my pulling out my extroverted side, to like, okay,
Mm.
let's. and it's manageable, it's like, okay, we're gonna do
Yeah.
coffee. Cool, we'll do coffee. We're
Yeah.
gonna do a walk. Oh, okay, I need a walk today, and I can walk and talk. Perfect. Okay. So yeah.
Well, I appreciate you for that because I do think we've both grown a lot, right? I think just being able to share all the things we've shared, the resources, the ideas. I think that's the other thing. We're both idea people, and so there's always
Mhm.
this like back and forth. Oh my gosh, what about this? And then what about that? And so
Yeah.
that generates a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of interest. But I think just pulling some of the threads together here. One is the ability to connect with people who have who are as passionate about what they're doing as
Mhm. Mhm.
what we do, right? There's something about just both. That doesn't have to be about the same thing, but I think having a similar vision, right? In this case,
Right.
developing young people or developing leaders seem to be like that, that common passion, and then being able to be willing to try new ways to get that done eventually
Mhm.
led us into, okay, now, hey, we really connect here. There's probably a lot more stuff we can talk about. But I do want to take the conversation a little bit away from just our dynamic, but thinking about you have now evolved in your profession too, right? You started off as a director. When I met you, you were director of the
Mhm.
Eagle Scholars Program, but now you're the executive director for the Vickery Meadows
Youth Development Foundation.
Development Foundation. Sorry. And I'm curious about when you're thinking about all these different volunteers or donors and all the people that you connect with on a regular basis, and you're always looking for ways in which to deepen some of those connections. Like, how does this idea of having a circle play in this world of
Mhm.
nonprofit volunteerism, community building?
I use a word all the time that my staff just rolls their eyes at, and now it's just become our S word. It's synergy.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like everybody has a talent and a skill, that's something that they're good at, something that they do well. Um, and my philosophy is figure that out and connect them in ways that, and I know this is a you saying, make them come alive.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because if they're doing something, I used to say all the time, if you come to me and say, Janet, I want to help, and I'm like, great, Valerie, I know you do public speaking, and I know you are, an executive coach, and all of this. So, can you tutor in physics tomorrow? Yeah, you're gonna be like, well. So what I always
It'd be a
try to
different kind of
do,
physics.
it's true, very true. Um, but what I always try to do is listen and figure out what that connection is.
Mm,
Um, and I think in that sense, I mean, that's how I kind of form this. So when I did that workshop with you, that circle of influencers, I mean, in some sense, I was like, why am I having to do this? Like, why is she asking me to put this stuff together, like on a piece of paper? Because I already do this. Like, it's already
mm,
natural in the way that I do it. And so I don't have them like written down, like, this is my person for this, and this is but I know who my go to people are.
mm,
And so I use that in as an executive director, just like I did as a director of a program. Um, I think I'm still figuring it out and still
mm,
finding my way is how to utilize that skill and talent as an executive director, because there's so much just in the 3 years that I've been in this position. It's so much new, and I love to learn. So that's what
mm,
I just kind of live in that space. Like, okay, that's why you're in this space, why you stay in this space and don't give up, because you do love to learn. So I'm going to figure
mhm,
it out. And so I think for the last 3 years, there's been an overwhelming, sense of learning new things. But I feel like as I get more and more, as some of those get under my belt and they become more foundational, it's like, okay, it's kind of like learning a language, right?
mm,
Once you get a few words, then you can build on those words. But at the beginning, it's like, I'm exhausted, I'm tired, and then,
Mm,
and then you start, once you kind of pick it up, it's like, okay, oh, that's a new word. That's really cool. I add that into my vocabulary. So
mm,
same thing here. So that's what I'm looking forward to is and I constantly, I mean, for the last couple of years, I've been thinking through like, okay, how do I do what I did as a program director in this executive director role? And how do
mm,
I connect people in that same way? Because I want it to feel authentic.
yeah.
I do not like, I don't want it to be superficial, but I also, and so, if somebody comes and wants to volunteer, I had somebody recently ask if they could do, or they emailed me and said, okay, this is what I'm going to do for you. And I'm like, okay, first of all, we've already had that done. so, so I'm like, how do I say that to them? And how do I find something else that might spark their interest
Okay. Mm,
without, without me having the same, just, okay, sure, come do that. And I'm like, it meant nothing. I really want something to mean something. And I like,
yeah.
that's the way I approach relationships.
It's interesting that this idea of volunteering, and you've already said it a couple different times, right? That one, you had individuals who were just like, I have an hour, what can I do? Like a one and done thing. Or people who are like very attached or fixated on this is the one thing that I can do, whether or not it serves you or not. Um, but I grew up in a family where volunteerism was like a way of life. My mom drilled
Mm-hmm.
that into us.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, she would give us 2 weeks off in the summer when we were out of school, and she's like, you can eat Pop Tarts for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I don't care. You get 2 weeks. Stay up all night and play video games if you want. 2 weeks. And then after that, my three brothers and I would have to go out and find something to do. So they all eventually became Eagle
Interesting.
Scouts. I got a chance to dabble a little bit more, and I did all kinds of volunteer activities, working at the church library to working at the gym on our military base where
Mm-hmm.
we were stationed. But every time I volunteered for something, I always found built a skill set that I didn't have.
Mm-hmm.
I got to expand and leverage relationships and connections that I didn't have. I had an opportunity to learn something or to teach something or to give something that other people needed and valued. Um, I could also be very selective about how long I did something. Sometimes it was hey, an hour and done. Other times it was like, I'm only doing this for
Right.
3 weeks or whatever, right? So if you had some advice to give to someone who's listening to this, who's like, okay, you know what? I might want to build my connections and my network through volunteering. What advice would you
Yeah.
give them?
Well, and yeah, I've got that, and I'll tie it back to your earlier question of like, what has our relationship, you know, I don't know, what has it done for me or whatever.
Mhm.
The other thing that you're really good at, and this is really something I do look for. I mean, it's not to say every volunteer has this, but the volunteers that I really love and appreciate the most, not that I don't love and appreciate the other ones, but the
I
most
won't tell them.
is don't tell anybody, right?
We're
No, this
talking
won't go
about
out,
you. No,
right?
okay.
But it's the people that are willing to show up regardless.
Yeah.
And so I knew if one scholar showed up to your raise your voice class, you were
Mhm.
still teaching them with all of your, everything. And if no scholars showed up, I knew that you weren't going to say, you know what, Janet, why are you I'm not doing anything. And I so value that because, and I think I may be speculating, but I think the reason you do that is because you recognize that you can always gain something no matter what it is. And whether it's, and I would say too, you're a fantastic initiator. So, like the raise your voice class, I don't exactly remember what got that started, but I think it was our conversation on, Gavel Club's great, but it's a little bit dry, and the scholars
It's
aren't
a little
really getting
formulaic.
into it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they sometimes don't show up, so they don't prepare their speech ahead of time. What
Hmm.
can we do? And so then it just became an iterative process because we believe that was one of our core principles was your voice matters, period. So how do we do that? And so that became part of it. And so you showing up constantly, consistently, and because you showed up constantly and consistently, I knew that I could pivot. And if not that this happened, but let's just say somebody didn't show up to take attendance that day and you were there, I could say, Valerie, can you greet people as they come in and take attendance? And you would have done that. And I
Mhm.
think so often people don't realize the value of just showing up and getting to know people for
Yeah.
people's sake, not for volunteering sake, but for people's sake.
Mhm.
And that's, truly with our scholars. I don't think you mentioned this at the beginning, but in our program we have over 30 languages spoken, so
Mhm.
an extreme diversity of culture.
Yeah.
My approach to when I first started as a program director, oh, I didn't know what we have: immigrants, we have refugees, we have native born Americans, we have all, every diversity, every religion, all of this
Mhm.
stuff. I didn't know anything. I had never heard of the Baha'i faith,
Mhm.
never had heard of anything like that. I could not tell you what a refugee meant. I still struggle with the difference in a refugee and an asylee. I'm getting better, but
Mhm.
so I mean, I can go and approach a volunteer opportunity, or, I always say, yes, I work in a nonprofit, so I have plenty of opportunities to volunteer in my own nonprofit. Let me work my 40 hours a week, and then there's still like 20 to volunteer. I got this.
Yeah.
So, but I had to ask questions, I had to learn. And it wasn't just about going in and offering a program and expecting that, if you really want to do something, you're going to do what I have, created for
Mm.
you. It was about getting to know people. And so, and I guess, let me just say this, because shout out to Lisa Nigro, if she ever watches this. She was my mentor, or has been my mentor, like, since college, and I probably talk to her once every 3 or 4 years. But
Yeah.
Lisa Nigro started the Inspiration Cafe in Chicago. And it is now, if you're in Chicago ever, go to the South Side. There's Inspiration Kitchens. It's the most fabulous restaurant ever, but it's run by people who are in recovery and coming out of homelessness.
Mm.
And so when I was there in the 90s, I went to I did it was actually a spring break campaign mission trip. And we got there, and they're supposed to always the churches are always supposed to have all the stuff set up for you to do, and you know your days are packed, and you get up early, go to bed late, but you're packed with stuff. We woke up one time, and I don't know if the minister hadn't planned it, or he and I I got to know him pretty well, and I don't think he's necessarily the planning type. I don't think he was one of these like me that's like, okay, we've got people coming, we got to have everything planned back to back to back. And so we got up, and he was like, oh yeah, that fell through, we don't have anything. And he said, let me call my friend down the street and see if we can go over there and volunteer over at her cafe. So we did. That's how I met her.
Mm.
I fell in love. It was this, cafe. They used to call them homeless cafes, but it was like a short order cook cafe,
Mm.
when people could come in, people that were in recovery and trying to, have stable housing and stuff, that they could
Mm.
come in, order breakfast. So I fell in love with this. And I said, before the end of the spring break, I asked her. I already had a job lined up at Whitewater and Branson. For the second year, I was lead lifeguard. I was going to be making $6 an hour, which was a lot back then. And so I said to her before the end, I said, I want to come back. I said, I
Mm.
want to do this. And she invited me for an internship for the first half of the summer, because I had some other stuff going on the second half. I got up there for my, 6-week internship. And the first day I got in there, I said, okay, I'm here. I said, what do you want me to do? And she looked at me and she said, and it was breakfast time, and there were people in the kitchen cooking. There were guests in the area, in the restaurant area. And she said, sit down and get to know the guests.
Mm.
And I said, oh, okay, I can do that. So I sat down and I chatted with people at the tables. And these are all people that are, either they're all dealing with some sort of homelessness, usually
Yeah.
coming. I mean, all of these guys would have been trying to come out of it, but might have been staying at a shelter or something like
Sure.
that. And I was like, great, I did that. Day two. And I said, okay, I'm ready, Lisa.
What's
What do I
next?
do? And she said, sit down and get to know the guests.
Hmm.
Okay, well, I did that yesterday, but okay, there's some others. So, okay. So I did that. Day three. So I am ready to go because I am volunteer. Well, I actually was getting it was a paid internship, but yeah, it was an internship. I was there to do whatever they needed and grace them with my presence and all of this. And day three, she said, sit down and get to know the guests. And so, I mean, at that point, I was a little bit fed up with her. And she eventually led me over to a closet that I describe as one that would, everything falls out on you when you open it up. And she said, okay, you can clean this. I said, I'm going to sit down and get to know the guests. And so I did. But that was like the most pivotal, amazing lesson for me.
Hmm.
Because one of the other things she told me, she said, when she was telling me this over and over again, she said, Janet, people may be homeless, but they haven't, at the time, it was the Chicago three-peat, had just happened with the Bulls and all that stuff. She's
Hmm.
like, people have an opinion on who's going to win the three-peat. People have an
Hmm.
opinion on who they want for president. People
Hmm.
know, so talk to them and get to know what they have thoughts and opinions about. And and dignify that presence, and
Hmm.
so, there were so many other lessons I learned from her about how to treat people. But that was, I mean, she was the most amazing, that was the most amazing lesson for me that I have carried with me, is
Wow.
just about, sit down and get to know the guests. And so,
Mm.
that's the advice that I would say to anyone. It isn't
Yeah.
about how many books you put on a bookshelf. It's not about how many people did you serve food and then disappear out of their lives. And it's not
Mhm.
even about what information and knowledge you imparted on somebody. It's really about how did you sit down and get to know the guests?
Hmm. I really love that. And in fact, Lisa would be proud to hear that you actually did the same thing with us, vol- all the volunteers and the mentors, when you were director of Eagle Scholars, because I remember often you would kind of get riled up when you saw all the mentors kind of huddling together and chatting. You're like, no,
Yes, I
hey,
still
go
do.
sit with the scholars, go sit with the scholars. Which I thought was really profound because, you're right. They talk about quality versus quantity. And I think
Mm,
the older we get, the more adept we are at understanding what quality relationships really look like. But I think when you're in that age range, these are 7th to 12th graders. So they're what,
right,
anywhere from like 12 to 17, 18 years old. Quality is not what matters there. There is
right.
quantity. And you said it, the more frequently people showed up, the more regular they were, the better the trust building was, the more the scholars were willing to try new things, the relationships deepened, and they were much more, they allowed themselves to be influenced more deeply. And that wouldn't have happened if you hadn't pushed us out into sitting with the scholars. I've had some
Mm,
really profound conversations with many scholars who are
right,
now they were 7th graders. Now they're in college or
right.
graduates. And
Or
I see them and I'm
graduated.
like, oh my gosh, you're doing
Uh-huh.
what? And I learned so much, not just about them and, like you're saying, all the life experiences that they've had, but also they taught me about being a different version of myself, especially with young people. And I have a lot of young people in my life. And the scholars, I'm going to give credit for helping me be a better listener, to understand that quantity of time is way more important at that stage in life than the quality that we all presume to wait for, like this big special
The
occasion. They're like, I
perfect
don't care.
program.
No,
Yeah,
no.
like
So Lisa
you
would
don't
be
have, I
proud that
mean,
you're doing it.
yeah.
You're doing it.
Yeah, and I think too, in listening and learning, sometimes, like, I follow a lot of our scholars on Facebook, or I don't do my Instagram so well, but what I see when I'm like listening to them and watching them and paying attention to them is how amazing, like some of them are from Burma, and the things that they have spoken about the war that goes on in Burma, and just their passion about protecting their people and how they have opinions. And what was amazing to me, I had done a summer program on Nobel Peace Prize winners like years ago. This was before I came over to the NYDF. And one of the Nobel Peace Prize winners was Aung San Suu Kyi, which, I'm like, oh, how cool is this? All these Nobel Peace Prize winners will teach about that. And then I remembered one of the scholars who was Rohingya talking about Aung San Suu Kyi, and she was so annoyed with her. And I thought, wait, what? But she's a Nobel Peace Prize winner. And this scholar just was talking about how the Rohingya people feel like she has betrayed them because she's in the government and isn't protecting them. And I'm thinking, mind blown, right? Because she's a Nobel Peace Prize winner, but yet there's a whole group of people who feel like she is not being peaceful, and with them. And so it was so things like that have been such an amazing education for me that go way beyond any kind of history books or anything we would ever learn in school, because I learn it from a first person perspective rather than a textbook, or rather than, thinking that this particular scholar, the biggest thing that they needed was whatever, financial literacy, and make sure you come to my class, and and if you don't come, then you obviously don't want college. Okay, maybe financial literacy isn't on their top 3, especially as a 15-year-old or whatever, or 13-year-old. But if I listen to her, I can hear so much about what she does know.
Yeah.
And I can learn from her things that I don't know. And it changes my world perspective and just my thought. I think originally the whole reason that, well, I say the whole reason, but our original conversation that led to this, this me being on this podcast was, how did I get to where I am on certain, issues and politics and things like that. But it just became, for, like in those situations, my world was opened up because of, sometimes I don't think in the beginning it was intentional at all. I think it just kind of slapped me in the face at first. And I'm like, wait, what are you doing? You're rocking my world because you're telling me that religion isn't supposed to be this way, it's to be this way. I'm like, how does that work? And wait, you're telling me that politics isn't only from, what I've heard from this set of the world, all of that stuff just blew my mind. And so now just, I want so many other people to be able to learn. And I know that that's not I can't make anybody learn, but I just see it as such an opportunity when you talk to people in different income brackets, different cultures, different religions, and you hear what they're saying, not just listen, but hear what they're saying. And then just, and think about it from that worldview perspective. And it becomes, to me, that is a valuable volunteer experience, because then you can really shape whatever it is, curriculum. Once I learn what's important to you, like I said, financial literacy may not even be on your radar, because you know what, as one person told me one time, what do you mean? If I've got 0, what am I going to do with 0? Like, how am I balancing or budgeting 0? Thought, oh, that's a good point, because the whole financial literacy curriculum was about make sure and save your money. And I'm thinking, this person is making $10,000 a year. What are they saving?
Yeah.
So yeah, just really listen to people and learning from people.
Oh, thank you so much, Janet. One, thank you for being such a wonderful friend to me and allowing my persistence to pay off on occasion.
Love it. Love it.
And also these opportunities that you're giving other people, right? Opportunities for them to learn, to grow, to have their world perspective shift. And I think, again, the word that keeps coming up for me about you and your ability and your commitment is your willingness. Right? Your willingness is everything. You have a willingness to change your mind about things. You have a willingness to engage with people that you don't know. You have a willingness to explore topics and things that, you know, may not have a specific destination or outcome, but you're like, hey, let's talk about it and see where we get to. And I think that's really what's helped get you this far. And so many people that you have brought along or have joined and inspired just because of your willingness. So thank you so much for being a wonderful friend and for being a guest on my podcast. Any
you,
final
Brett.
words?
When's the next coffee? No.
When's the next coffee? we do have it on the calendar, y'all, so don't worry about that.
That's right.
It's commitment.
That's right. No, I appreciate even like this conversation, because I think it's just always the reflection for me. And it, you know, just it always has me thinking. And so yeah, thank you for that opportunity.
You're welcome, friend. Yay. Thanks everybody for joining us for this episode of The Circle of Hope. Looking forward to the next conversation. Thanks for joining me on this episode of The Circle of Hope. Don't forget to subscribe, follow, and share with someone in your circle. And if you're curious about the upcoming book, visit valeriehope.com for updates and extras. Until then, stay connected.